Naya had always been different from everyone around her, and she felt it every single day of her life. She was born into an Apache community known for strength, courage, and deep connection to nature. But even among her own people, she stood out. From childhood, she grew taller and stronger than the other girls. At first, everyone admired her height and joked that she would one day be a great protector of the land. But as she grew older, the admiration slowly turned into distance. People respected her, yet they did not always know how to approach her. Some felt intimidated, some felt unsure of how to communicate with a girl who looked so powerful but spoke so softly. Naya herself never felt powerful. Inside, she felt like a gentle, quiet soul who simply wanted someone to understand her. She enjoyed sitting near the river, listening to the water, and weaving simple bracelets out of thread and beads. She liked the quiet spaces more than the busy gatherings. Even though she had a kind heart and a warm smile, she often felt invisible in a strange way. People would look at her physical size, but not at her inner self. Because of this, loneliness became her quiet companion. She had friends, but none who truly knew the thoughts she carried in her heart. She watched other girls laugh with their partners, share moments of joy, and talk about their dreams of family life. She wanted the same, but every time someone talked to her, they treated her like someone strong, not someone who could also feel lonely or need comfort. On the other side of the land lived Aman, a farmer who spent most of his days surrounded by fields, soil, and the gentle sounds of animals. His life was simple, but peaceful. He lived on a small piece of land inherited from his father. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, fed the animals, checked the crops, and planned the day's work. He rarely traveled beyond the nearby village and preferred the calm quietness of his farm over busy marketplaces. Aman was known as a shy man. He never caused trouble, never spoke too loudly, and never pushed himself into conversations. People liked him, but he was never the center of attention. Even during village gatherings, he often stood at the back or sat in a corner, smiling politely and listening rather than speaking. Some people assumed he liked being alone, but the truth was different. Aman wasn't alone by choice. He was alone because he didn't know how to express himself around others. He feared saying something wrong, being laughed at, or looking foolish. In his heart, he wanted companionship, a person who would accept his quiet nature and not rush him. But every time he tried to talk to someone new, his shyness froze his words. He would return to his farm feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. For years, Naya and Aman lived their separate lives, unaware that their paths would cross in the most unexpected way. Naya had to travel through the farmland area once every few weeks to collect supplies from a trader who set up near the borders of the village. She usually kept her visits brief, not wanting to draw too much attention to herself. One warm afternoon, as the sun hung bright in the sky, she walked slowly along the narrow dirt road that passed by Aman's farm. The wind carried the smell of fresh soil and crops. Birds sang softly, and everything felt calm. As she approached the open gate, she noticed a man struggling with a wooden crate. It looked heavy, and he kept pausing to catch his breath. That man was Aman. He had bought a large box of seeds, but it turned out to be heavier than he expected. He didn't notice Naya at first because he was so focused on lifting the crate. His face turned red from effort, and he kept muttering to himself, trying to find the best way to carry it inside the storage shed. Naya stopped for a moment, watching quietly. She didn't like interfering with people unless they looked like they genuinely needed help. After a few seconds, she took a gentle step forward and spoke softly. "Do you need help?" Aman froze. He looked up, and the first thing he noticed was her height. She was taller than anyone he had ever met. But the second thing he noticed was her expression. It was warm, kind, and respectful. She wasn't laughing at him. She wasn't judging him. She was simply offering help. Embarrassed but grateful, Aman nodded. "Yes. It's a bit heavier than I expected." His voice was soft, almost shy. Naya walked closer and lifted the crate with ease. Not because she wanted to show her strength, but because for her, it was natural. Aman stared, surprised. but she carried it calmly toward the shed and placed it gently on the ground. "Thank you," Aman said, sincerely. "You're welcome," Naya replied with a small smile. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed, so she kept her tone gentle and peaceful. There was a moment of silence between them. Not an awkward silence, but one that felt like two quiet natures meeting for the first time. Aman felt something unusual. He didn't feel nervous talking to her. Usually, meeting new people made his heart race, but Naya's calm presence felt comforting. Naya felt something too. She was used to people staring at her size before looking at her face, but Aman looked directly into her eyes. His gaze wasn't fearful or surprised, it was simply sincere. "Do you live here alone?" she asked softly. Aman nodded. "Yes. It's just me. My parents passed the farm to me, and I've been taking care of it since." Naya listened with interest, and Aman found himself talking more than he expected. He told her about his crops, animals, and daily routine. She listened with real attention, something he wasn't used to. In return, she told him a little about her community and how she often helped gather items for her people. She didn't reveal her deeper feelings, but she spoke with honesty. Aman found her voice soothing, like a soft wind passing through the trees. For the first time in a long while, Naya didn't feel judged, and Aman didn't feel shy. They stood under the shade of a tree, talking about simple things, weather, work, travel, and small moments of life that usually go unnoticed. Before Naya continued her journey, she said, "I pass through this area sometimes. Maybe I will see you again." Aman nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I would like that." As she walked away, Aman stood quietly, watching her figure grow smaller in the distance. He didn't know why, but he felt a soft happiness inside, something he hadn't felt in many years. And Naya, while walking toward the trader, couldn't stop thinking about the shy farmer who had looked at her with such kindness and calmness. It was rare for her to feel seen as a person rather than a giant girl. Neither of them knew it yet, but this small meeting, a simple moment, a simple conversation, was the beginning of something that would change both of their lives. They came from different worlds, but their hearts carried the same quiet longing for someone who understood them, and fate, in its gentle way, had finally brought them face to face. After their first meeting, Naya found her steps naturally slowing down whenever she passed near Aman's farm. She did not plan it, and she did not want to make it obvious. But something inside her felt lighter each time she saw the wooden fence or heard the quiet sound of his animals. She had met many people in her life, but Aman was different. He didn't stare at her size, he didn't act nervous around her, and he didn't treat her like someone unusual. When he talked to her, he looked at her eyes, not at her height, not at her strong arms, but at her as a person. That simple thing stayed in her heart. Aman also found his thoughts drifting back to her. He wasn't used to talking to strangers for long. Most conversations in his life were short. People asked about crops, prices, weather, or farm work, and then moved on. But Naya had stayed and talked to him like he mattered. Not because she needed something from him, not because she was being polite, but because she genuinely enjoyed hearing his words. That feeling was rare for him. Days passed, and Aman often looked toward the dirt road, wondering if she might appear again. He didn't tell anyone about that first meeting. It felt too personal, too precious. He found himself replaying their conversation in his mind, thinking of things he wished he had said, wondering if he would ever get the chance to say them. One bright afternoon, while Aman was fixing a fence that had loosened in the wind, he heard footsteps on the road. At first, he ignored the sound, thinking it was a traveler or a villager passing through. But when he lifted his head to take a break, he saw her Naya walking with a small woven bag on her shoulder. She paused when she saw him, and a soft smile appeared on her face. The same warm, gentle smile he remembered. "Hello again," she said softly. Aman felt heat rise to his cheeks, though he didn't know why. "Hello. It's nice to see you again." His voice came out quieter than he intended, but she heard it clearly. Naya walked closer, stopping near the fence. She watched him work for a moment, noticing how carefully he tied the ropes and checked every wooden post. His hands were steady, his movements patient. She admired that. She admired patience because it was something she struggled with. She had strength but not always calmness. Aman seemed to be made of calmness. "How is your farm today?" she asked. Aman wiped a bit of dust from his forehead. "Better now. The wind made this part loose, but I'm fixing it." "Do you fix everything by yourself?" she asked with curiosity. "Yes," he replied. "I've been doing it alone for years now. I've gotten used to it." Naya nodded slowly. She understood what it meant to get used to being alone. She had spent many nights sitting by the river in silence, feeling the weight of her own thoughts. That feeling was familiar. "Would you like help?" she asked. Aman hesitated. He didn't want to trouble her. "It's all right. I don't want to make you work." Naya gently shook her head. "I don't mind. Helping someone feels good." Aman wasn't used to accepting help, but something about her sincerity made him nod. Together, they worked side by side. Aman tied the rope while Naya held the posts steady. Her hands were strong enough to keep everything still, and his hands were steady enough to finish the details. They didn't talk too much while working, but the silence was comfortable, not heavy. When they finished, they sat under a tree near the farmland. The breeze carried the smell of fresh soil, and the branches above them made soft shadows on the ground. "Do you travel a lot?" Aman asked, trying to keep the conversation going. "Only when needed," Naya said. "I gather supplies for my people sometimes. They trust me with the longer routes." "That sounds tiring," Aman said. "It can be," she replied. "But it feels good to be useful. Even though sometimes I feel like being useful is the only reason people pay attention to me." Aman looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" Naya pulled a small leaf from the grass and turned it between her fingers. "People see my height first. They think I'm strong, so they ask me for physical help. They rarely talk to me about simple things, like how I'm feeling or what I want in life. It makes me feel distant sometimes." Aman listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He knew how it felt when people didn't look beyond the surface. "I understand," he said softly. "People think I like being alone because I'm quiet. They think I don't need anyone. But that's not true." Naya looked at him with gentle surprise. She didn't expect him to open up so honestly. "You feel alone too?" He nodded. "Most days. The farm keeps me busy. But busy is not the same as happy." His words touched her. They weren't dramatic, but they were honest. And honesty was something she valued deeply. From that day, their bond began to grow. Naya continued stopping by whenever she passed. Sometimes, she helped with a small task. Sometimes she brought dried berries or handmade bracelets as gifts. Aman would offer her water, food, or a place to sit in the shade. Their conversations grew longer each time. They talked about childhood memories, dreams they never said aloud to anyone else, worries that stayed hidden in their hearts. Naya found comfort in Aman's soft voice and thoughtful questions. He didn't rush her, didn't judge her, didn't make her feel strange. Aman found comfort in her presence. Her strength made him feel safe, and her gentle personality made him feel understood. One late afternoon, the sky turned golden as the sun lowered behind the hills. Naya stood near the fence while Aman sat on a wooden box, wiping dust from his hands. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Aman, can I tell you something personal?" Aman straightened, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Of course." She looked at the horizon, then at him. Her eyes carried years of unspoken feelings. "Sometimes, it hurts being so alone. People think strength means you don't need anyone. But inside, I feel the opposite. I wish I had someone who cared for me as a person. Not for what I can carry or protect." Aman felt his heart tighten. He had never heard her speak with such vulnerability. She continued. "It hurts being so alone without a man, without someone who understands me, listens to me, and sees me as more than my height or strength. I don't say this to complain. I needed to say it out loud. Aman wanted to speak, but his words got stuck. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. He had felt loneliness too, but hearing her confess it so openly made him feel closer to her than ever. He finally managed to say, "You deserve someone who understands you. Someone who values your heart." Naya looked down, as if unsure how her words had sounded. She worried she might have shared too much. Aman could see the worry in her eyes. But he didn't know how to express his own feelings yet. The sunlight faded slowly, and the day ended with both of them sitting quietly, each thinking deeply about their own lives and the growing connection between them. From that day, something subtle but powerful changed between them. Their conversations carried more warmth, more trust, more emotion. Even though neither of them said it clearly yet, both felt something new, beginning something that made their hearts hopeful again. After the day, Naya opened her heart and shared her loneliness. Something inside her changed. She walked away from Aman's farm feeling lighter for a moment. But as night came and the stars filled the sky, her thoughts grew heavier. She replayed her own words again and again. She wondered if she had spoken too openly or if she had made Aman uncomfortable. She wasn't used to sharing her feelings with anyone, especially not something so personal and painful. When she woke up the next morning, the feeling had grown even stronger. She felt embarrassed, unsure if Aman would look at her differently now. She tried to remind herself that he had listened with kindness, but doubt still whispered in her mind. She convinced herself that perhaps she should visit him less, at least for a while, until her feelings settled. And so, slowly, she began to change her route. Instead of passing near his farm every time she traveled, she took longer paths. Instead of stopping to talk, she kept walking. She didn't do this out of anger, she did it out of fear. Fear of misunderstanding. Fear of losing the only person who made her feel truly seen. On the other side of the farmland, Aman also felt the change. He noticed it on the very first day she didn't appear. He tried to convince himself that she was simply busy. But when a week passed, he felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't just disappointment. It was something deeper, something that made his evenings feel strangely empty. Every day, he looked toward the dirt road, expecting her tall figure to appear. Every time someone walked by, his heart lifted for a second, then fell again when he realized it wasn't her. He tried to focus on work, but his mind wandered back to their last conversation. Her words were gentle, but filled with emotion. "It hurts being so alone without a man." He had heard sadness in her voice. A sadness that felt familiar to him. Aman wasn't good at understanding emotions, especially his own. But he knew one thing clearly. He missed her. More than he expected. More than he wanted to admit. One quiet afternoon, as he sat on a wooden stool fixing one of his tools, he heard distant thunder in the sky. Dark clouds gathered quickly, and he knew a storm was coming. He hurried to bring his animals inside and cover the crops. While working, the only thought in his mind was whether Naya was somewhere on the road, walking through the wind and dust alone. He didn't know why he felt so worried, but he did. On the other side, Naya was indeed on the road that day. She had taken a longer route again, avoiding passing too close to the farm. The wind grew stronger, and her hair blew across her face. She pulled her woven bag closer to her chest as dust began to rise. When the first drops of rain fell, she quickened her pace. But halfway along the path, a sharp pain shot through her foot. She had stepped on a loose stone, and her ankle twisted. She tried to walk, but the pain forced her to stop. The storm was growing louder, the wind harsher, and she knew she wouldn't make it home quickly. For a moment, she stood still, struggling to steady herself. She didn't want to turn back toward Aman's farm because she feared facing him after distancing herself. But the weather was worsening fast, and she knew she had no choice. Slowly, carefully, she turned around and started limping toward the farm. The rain grew heavier, and her clothes became wet. The pain in her foot grew stronger, but she kept moving because she had to. When Aman saw a shadow approaching through the storm, his heart jumped. As the figure came closer and he recognized her, he didn't hesitate. He rushed out of the shelter and ran toward her. "Naya," he called out, his voice filled with genuine worry. She was shivering slightly, trying to stay balanced. "I twisted my foot," she said softly. The storm came too fast. Without a second thought, Aman stepped beside her and offered support. She hesitated, but the ground was slippery, and she needed help. Gently, she placed her hand on his shoulder. He guided her slowly toward the shed, where the rain was blocked. Once inside, he brought a small cloth and warm water. He knelt down, carefully checking her foot. His hands were gentle, and his eyes focused. She watched him silently, surprised by how naturally he cared for her. "I'm sorry," she murmured. Aman looked up. "Sorry? For what?" "For avoiding your place. I didn't mean to. I just thought maybe I said too much last time." Aman stopped cleaning her foot and sat back slightly. Rain continued hitting the roof, and thunder echoed far away. But inside the shed, the air grew quiet and still. "Naya," he said softly, "I wasn't bothered by your words. I was just surprised. Not in a bad way. In a way that made me think." She looked uncertain. "Think about what?" Aman took a slow breath. "About how much your words felt like my own. I didn't know how to answer that day because I feel alone too. I'm used to it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." Her eyes softened. She had never heard him speak with such openness. "I thought," he continued, "that someone like you wouldn't understand someone like me. But now I see we both understand loneliness in the same way." Naya blinked, feeling warmth rise in her chest. Suddenly, everything she had worried about began to fade. "Aman," she said gently, "you're the first person who ever listened to me without fear or judgment. I was afraid I said too much, but I'm even more afraid of losing the connection we have." Aman lowered his gaze. "I thought maybe you stopped coming because I wasn't good enough company." Naya felt a small ache at his words. "No, I stopped coming because I thought I wasn't good enough." They looked at each other, both surprised at how wrong their assumptions had been. The storm outside continued, but inside, something cleared between them, something honest and warm. Aman finished cleaning her foot with gentle hands. "You should rest for a while," he said softly. "When the rain stops, I'll help you get home." She nodded. She didn't want to leave immediately anyway. As the storm passed slowly, they talked. Not about crops or travel, but about feelings they had buried for years. Aman admitted how silence often felt heavy for him, and Naya shared how strength sometimes felt like a burden. They realized how similar their lives were, even though they came from different worlds. By the time the clouds thinned and the last drops of rain fell, their hearts felt lighter. The distance that had grown between them in the past weeks dissolved completely. When Aman helped her stand again, she didn't let go of his shoulder too quickly, and this time, he didn't pretend not to notice. Their bond had shifted. It was no longer just a friendship or a passing connection. They both felt something deeper, something that scared them a little but comforted them even more. As they walked together in the soft, fresh air after the storm, both understood one truth clearly: they didn't want distance anymore. For the first time in a long time, they felt seen, understood, and valued, not for strength, not for silence, not for what they could do, but simply for who they were. And though neither spoke it aloud yet, both knew that their hearts had taken a quiet step toward each other. The morning after the storm felt new, as if the world had washed itself clean overnight. The air held the smell of fresh soil, and the trees shimmered softly under the sunlight. Naya walked slowly toward Aman's farm, her ankle still a little sore but much better than before. She did not take the long route this time. She took the familiar road, the road she had avoided for days. She felt nervous at first, unsure of what to say or how to act after everything that had happened. But the memory of Aman's gentle words from the day before made her steps steadier. She remembered how he had spoken of his own loneliness, how carefully he had held her foot, how softly he had listened. She no longer felt the fear that had kept her away. Instead, she felt a sense of comfort growing inside her, like a small warmth that refused to fade. She found Aman feeding his animals when she arrived. He looked up as soon as he heard footsteps, and when he saw her, his face lit up with a soft smile that made her heart settle peacefully. "You came early today," he said, his voice calm but warm. "I wanted to," she replied. "And I wanted to thank you again for helping me yesterday." "You don't need to thank me," he said gently. "I was glad I could help." They stood there for a moment, both quietly happy just to see each other. It felt natural now, not awkward or confusing. The silence between them no longer felt empty, it felt peaceful, like two hearts breathing in the same rhythm. Aman finished feeding the animals, and Naya walked beside him as he moved toward the field. Every step she took felt more grounded than before. The fear she once carried had loosened its grip, replaced by a calm assurance she had never known. Aman invited her to sit under the tree, the same tree where they had spoken many times before. The shade was cool, and the breeze was gentle, lifting strands of her hair as she sat down. Aman settled beside her, not too close, not too far, just close enough to show that he wanted her company. "Did your ankle hurt last night?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "But not as much as before. The rest helped." "I'm glad," he said softly. There was a tenderness in his tone that she hadn't noticed before. Or perhaps she hadn't allowed herself to notice it earlier. Now she could hear it clearly, and it made her feel something warm in her chest. For a long moment, neither spoke. They watched the sunlight dance on the leaves, listened to the sounds of birds, and felt the gentle wind move around them. Finally, Naya said, "Aman, I don't want to avoid you anymore. I don't want to hide my feelings or pretend I don't care." Aman turned to her slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you said that, because I don't want distance between us either." She looked at him, and for the first time, she saw hope in his eyes, soft, careful hope, like something fragile being held with both hands. "I was scared," she said quietly. "I thought I said too much. I thought you might not want someone like me in your life." Aman shook his head gently. "Naya, you're the only person I feel comfortable speaking to. I don't know how it happened, but when I'm with you, I feel calm. I feel understood. I don't feel small or strange. I feel seen." His words touched her deeply. That was all she had ever wanted to be seen, not for her size or her strength, but for her heart. "You see me too," she whispered, "in a way no one else ever has." The breeze passed between them, carrying the quiet tenderness of their unspoken feelings. It was clear now, even without words. Their connection had grown into something sincere and meaningful. Aman stood up and offered his hand. "Come," he said softly. "Let me show you something." "Come." She placed her hand in his, surprised at how naturally the gesture felt. He guided her toward the fields where small sprouts of new crops had begun to rise. He stopped near a patch of soil that looked freshly planted. "This part is new," he said. "I planted it yesterday before the storm came." "It looks good," she said softly. Aman looked at the soil, then at her. "I want to grow more things, not just crops. I want a life that doesn't feel empty anymore." Her breath caught slightly at his words. She sensed what he was trying to say, even if he struggled to express it clearly. "A life feels less empty when there is someone to share it with," she said gently. He nodded. "Yes. That's what I'm learning." They stood there quietly, letting the meaning of their words settle in the air. The sun warmed their faces, and the world around them seemed to slow down, as if giving them space to breathe. As the days passed, Naya began visiting Aman's farm more often, not because she happened to pass by, but because she chose to. She helped him water the crops, carried baskets to the storage shed, and sometimes simply sat under the tree while he worked. When she rested, he would join her, and they would talk about everything: small memories, future plans, fears they had never voiced before. Aman found himself opening up in ways he had never imagined. Naya did too. Their laughter became common, their conversations deeper, and their silences softer. The villagers started noticing Naya's regular visits. At first, they were surprised to see such a tall, strong girl spending time with the shy farmer. But as they saw the peaceful look on both their faces, the surprise turned into quiet acceptance. People in the village were simple and kind. They respected sincerity when they saw it. One afternoon, when the sky was soft blue with gentle clouds floating lazily above, Aman walked with Naya near the small stream that ran alongside his farm. The water glimmered under the sunlight, and the soft sound of its flow filled the air. Naya walked slowly, listening to the water. "This place feels peaceful," she said. "It is," Aman replied. "But it feels even more peaceful when you're here." She smiled, a soft smile that reached her eyes. "I feel the same." They reached a large flat stone beside the stream and sat down. The sound of water made their thoughts feel clearer, and the sunlight warmed their backs. "Naya," Aman began quietly, "I'm not good with words. I get nervous. I don't know how to say things the right way." Aman, she looked at him patiently. "You can say anything. You don't have to be perfect with me." Aman took a slow breath. "You said once that it hurts being alone. I feel the same. But with you, I don't feel alone anymore." Her heart softened at his honesty. He continued, "I can't promise big things. I'm a simple man. But I can promise that when you're here, I feel a kind of happiness I never felt before." Naya felt her eyes warm with emotion. "Aman, that is more than enough for me." They didn't need dramatic declarations or loud promises. Their bond had grown quietly, like seeds turning into plants, slowly, steadily, beautifully. From that day forward, they began building a life together. Not a rushed life. Not a complicated one, just a simple, honest life. Naya would visit the farm often, sometimes staying for hours. Aman would prepare fresh fruits for her, or make simple meals to share. The two of them became a familiar pair, always seen talking under the tree, walking by the stream, or tending to the fields together. As weeks passed, their hearts grew closer. What began as a small connection grew into something deep and lasting. Naya no longer felt like a lonely giant girl searching for acceptance. Aman no longer felt like a shy farmer hidden behind silence. They found balance in each other. Strength in her, gentleness in him, calmness in him, warmth in her. Together, they formed a bond that felt natural and right. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills and painted the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, Naya stood beside Aman on the edge of his field. The golden light touched their faces, and the world felt quiet and perfect. Naya looked at him and gently said, "Aman, I'm not alone anymore." Aman met her eyes, calm and certain. "Neither am I." They didn't need to say anything more. The silence between them was full of understanding. The loneliness that once lived in both their hearts had finally found a home each other. And so, under the fading sunlight of a peaceful evening, the shy farmer and the gentle Apache girl began a new chapter of life together, one built on honesty, kindness, and the quiet comfort of never being alone again.